Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Watch my video and subscribe my channel. Good news! This is a worthy finish for Lee and Luna. They ended up in jail. In the sprawling, emotional, and endlessly twisting world of the bold and the beautiful, few arcs have drawn as much divided attention and raw fan energy as the saga of Lee Finnegan and Luna Nozowa, two women bound by blood, deception, and a seemingly unshakable pattern of destruction, both of whom finally faced the reckoning fans have been calling for when the storylines converged into what social media has already declared a worthy ending. As Lee, the once proud surgeon who faked deaths, manipulated medical outcomes, and tried to play God in a city already drowning in secrets, and Luna, the conflicted, fragile, yet increasingly manipulative young woman who once had the sympathy of the audience but allowed jealousy, lust, and darkness to override her humanity, were at last dragged into the merciless grip of the justice system, ending up behind bars in a shocking climax that rippled through every corner of Los Angeles, from the Forrester boardroom to Bill Spencer's skyscraper. From Sheila Carter's haunted redemption quest to Ridge Forrester's endless tirades about family loyalty, from Hope Logan's heartache to Steffi Forrester's reluctant relief, and from Finn's moral collapse to the Spencer brothers' fractured bond, as the canvas exploded with long-delayed consequences and messy fallout, with the details of their arrests unspooling like a slow-motion earthquake. Because when Lee's obsession with control finally boiled over into public exposure with Finn piecing together her God complex after comparing her hidden files about faked death certificates for both him and Luna, and when Luna's sins, from the Zen seduction drugging to the violent attack that left Liam Spencer clinging to life, could no longer be excused as mistakes, but were revealed as deliberate choices fueled by greed and twisted ambition. The police arrived not in some subtle whisper of off-screen exposition, but with flashing lights and slamming cuffs, hauling mother and daughter away. In full view of Steffi, Finn, Hope, Ridge, Brooke, Bill, and even Sheila, who stood watching with tears of both vindication and pain, declaring that sometimes the devil you know doesn't need redemption. They need a cell. And so it came to pass that Lee, who once pulled Finn's broken body from the water to fake his death, who once sneered at Sheila for being the worst mother alive, had to accept that in the end she herself wasn't far from Sheila in playing with lives and destinies, and Luna, who once charmed her way into the Forrester family under Poppy's shadow, now sat staring at cold steel bars instead of shimmering runway lights, with fans erupting online calling it karma, justice, and the soap's first true accountability arc in years, as hashtags like hashtag Lee and Luna locked up and hashtag justice for Liam trended, while the fallout unraveled with breathtaking scope. Finn torn between relief that his tormentors were gone and devastation that his own adoptive mother and cousin were now disgraced. Felons, Steffi processing the relief of safety for her children, yet the grief of watching her family fracture further. Hope stunned as Liam's near-death finally had closure, but unsure if she should take him back now that the women who endangered him were caged. Bill Spencer pacing Spencer Publications like a tiger finally tasting revenge for Luna's bullet and Lee's manipulation. Ridge smugly reminding everyone that Forrester always survived scandal, while Brooke quietly admitted she never trusted. Poppy's bloodline, Sheila walking the edge of redemption by openly thanking the system for doing what she never could. Stop Lee, and in one of the most dramatic courtroom spectacles the show has ever staged, Judge Craig McMullen presiding as evidence of faked deaths, medical fraud, drugging, and attempted murder played out in front of the stunned LA elite, leading to guilty verdicts that sent Lee and Luna into matching orange jumpsuits, side by side, but no longer able to control their story, with Lee bitterly hissing that she did everything for family, and Luna screaming that she just wanted to be loved, both silenced by the clanging doors of their cell. And with that, the narrative cascaded outward into months of fallout. Finn haunted by the fact that his very identity had been controlled by a woman who claimed to love him. Poppy devastated that her daughter's promising life had curdled into shame. Zend left reeling from the truth about Luna's drugging betrayal. Ridge and Eric, declaring the Forrester name restored after purging the scandal. Hope reevaluating every romantic choice in the wake of seeing Liam nearly destroyed by Luna's spiral, and Bill, for once, not chasing women, but standing quietly by his son's bedside, vowing Spencer loyalty above all else. While social media fans celebrated the long arc finally having closure, posting memes of Lee and Luna in orange alongside captions like, "Best plot twist ever," and "should have happened years ago," and yet because this is the bold and the beautiful, whispers of appeal and possible escape still lurk in the corners, because even though justice has finally come down, fans know that in daytime drama nothing is permanent, not death, not love, not even jail. But for now, in this moment, the soap has given fans the cathartic ending they begged for, the worthy finale of a dark mother-daughter saga, as Lee and Luna sit behind bars, powerless, while the rest of Los Angeles picks up the pieces of the lives they shattered. The next wave of the story unfurled like an unstoppable storm, and as the days turned into weeks, the magnitude of Lee and Luna's downfall deepened, pulling in every character with ties to the Finnegan-Nozoa family tree, and what fans first celebrated as a worthy ending began to sprawl into one of the boldest and most intricate fallout arcs in recent Bold and the Beautiful memory. Starting with the highly publicized trial that dominated Los Angeles headlines, where reporters swarmed the courthouse steps shouting questions at Ridge, Steffi, Bill, and Hope, where Poppy fainted in the hallway upon hearing the damning testimony about her daughter's calculated drugging of Zend, and where Finn, who once looked at Lee as the woman who raised him from boy to man, now sat rigid in his seat, unable to reconcile the mother who once saved his life with the doctor who manipulated records and nearly destroyed him, while Luna, younger but no less culpable, crumbled on the stand weeping. Crocodile tears that alternately swayed and disgusted the jury, especially when the prosecution rolled tape of Liam's testimony describing the moment he felt the bullet tear into him, the coldness of Luna's eyes as she pulled the trigger, and the weeks of suffering that followed while his father, Bill, nearly tore the city apart seeking answers, and yet the defense tried to twist it all as a tragic misunderstanding, claiming Luna's actions were fueled by pressure, neglect, and Poppy's inconsistent parenting. But the jury was unmoved, and when the guilty verdict rang out, gasps echoed through the chamber. Lee, stoic until the last second, finally cracked, screaming that Sheila Carter was the real villain and that she was no worse than the woman the Forresters allowed to roam free, while Luna collapsed, in sobs, reaching toward Zend, who sat in the gallery shaking his head, unable to reconcile the girl he once dreamed of designing for with a predator who had stolen his agency through deceit. And when the judge's gavel slammed, both women were whisked away in cuffs. An image splashed across tabloids the next morning with the headline, "Beautiful and no more. Li and Luna sent to prison." A headline that fueled days of social media chatter as fans debated whether it was truly the end or whether Brad Bell had another resurrection card up his sleeve. And while prison seemed like closure, the soap smartly stretched the fallout, showing the Forrester mansion buzzing with aftershocks as Eric declared it proof that their family must remain united, as Brooke worried about Hope's proximity to Liam during his recovery, as Ridge smirked that Bill Spencer finally got what he wanted, and as Steffi wrestled with guilt over how deeply entwined she had allowed Lee into her home, while over at Spencer Publications, Bill walked the halls like a king restored, boasting that justice had been served, but privately confessing to Katie that he couldn't shake the sight of his son's pain or the knowledge that vengeance had cost him parts of his humanity. And across town, Sheila Carter became the story's strangest victor, sitting with Deacon at Aiel Giardino and admitting that for the first time in decades she wasn't the one in handcuffs, musing with bitter satisfaction that Lee, who had once mocked her as a failed mother, was now branded a criminal, a hypocrite, and a danger. And while Sheila basked in ironic redemption, Poppy Nozoa spiraled, drowning her grief in wine and pills, staggering into the Spencer estate, begging Bill to forgive her for the daughter she couldn't save, while R.J. Forrester distanced himself from the chaos, muttering that he had dodged a bullet by never trusting Luna fully. And Zend poured himself into work, vowing to never again let desire blind him to manipulation. But it was Finn's inner war that carried the emotional core, with scene after scene of him haunted in his hospital scrubs, breaking down to Steffi that he didn't know who he was anymore because the woman who shaped his life was now branded a liar, a criminal, and no different than Sheila. And when Steffi told him softly that sometimes we create our own monsters by refusing to see the truth, the audience gasped at the foreshadowing. Because while Lee and Luna were trapped behind bars, prison was not the end of their saga, but merely the setting for the next act. As whispers began to leak about Lee attempting to take over the prison infirmary, manipulating guards with her surgical knowledge, while Luna, far less hardened, began aligning herself with dangerous inmates, honing a survival edge that suggested mother and daughter could rise again, meaner, sharper, and with vengeance in their veins. And even as fans rejoiced at seeing justice served, speculation exploded that the soap was setting up a future prison break arc, because in daytime, justice may be poetic, but it is never permanent, and with each episode stretching the ripples, Bill and Katie reigniting romance in the glow of Spencer family unity, hope torn between Carter's stability and Liam's wounded pleas, Ridge distracted by Brooke's lingering loyalty to Bill, Steffi haunted by whether Finn could forgive her family's part in enabling Lee, Sheila flirting with genuine redemption. The storyline proved itself a sprawling epic, weaving together justice, love, betrayal, and the eternal question of whether people ever truly change. And through it all, Lee and Luna's image, orange-clad behind bars, yet still plotting, remained the haunting symbol of a saga that gave fans the closure they demanded, but left just enough cracks in the prison walls to keep them glued to their screens for what might come next. And so, as the prison gates clanged shut behind Lee Finnegan and Luna Nozwa, the soap dove into uncharted territory, expanding beyond the courtroom melodrama into the stark, unforgiving reality of incarceration, with a mother-daughter duo who once schemed in Los Angeles high-rises now faced cold steel bunks, fluorescent lights, and the social hierarchy of prison life. And immediately Lee began asserting herself in the infirmary, leveraging her medical credentials to worm her way into the trust of prison staff, volunteering to triage inmates and quickly carving out a position of authority. Yet her motives were less about healing and more about control, whispering to Luna during brief recreation breaks that power comes from who needs you most, while Luna, far younger and less seasoned, struggled to adapt, clinging to the memory of designer gowns and runway dreams, while navigating the advances of hardened inmates who saw weakness in her sobbing exterior. And as she began aligning herself with a group of women led by a scarred ex-gang leader named Teresa, fans on social media went wild, predicting Luna's transformation into a full-blown prison queenpin, while in Los Angeles proper, the ripple effects continued to devastate every household. Finn, in particular, could not shake the urge to visit Lee, despite Steffi's insistence that cutting ties was the only path forward. And when Finn finally broke down, walking into the visitation room where Lee sat in her orange jumpsuit, hair pulled back, eyes burning with defiance, the emotional explosion rattled viewers. Finn demanded to know why she had manipulated his entire existence, why she had faked deaths, twisted destinies, and weaponized medicine. And Lee countered coldly that every choice she made was for him, for family, that she was no worse than Sheila Carter, whom he continued to forgive. A statement that sent Finn spiraling because for the first time he admitted aloud that Sheila was showing more remorse than Lee. A revelation that shook Steffi when he confessed it to her in the cliffhanger that week, while Luna, in her own prison subplot, began morphing into a darker figure, leaning into her alliance with Teresa and learning how to barter, manipulate, and survive, eventually confronting her mother during visitation and screaming that Lee had ruined her life, that she had followed her example, that every crime she committed was born out of Lee's obsession with control, and Lee for once was struck silent, as if realizing her daughter was not just a victim, but also her mirror. And meanwhile, outside the prison, Poppy fell deeper into despair, nearly overdosing on sedatives until Bill Spencer discovered her collapsed at Aiel Giardino, rushing her to the hospital and demanding Finn save her despite his own hatred toward Poppy's bloodline, leading to one of the most controversial episodes of the year, where Finn resuscitated Poppy while whispering through gritted teeth that he hated saving her, but wouldn't let her daughter's shame claim another life. A scene that had fans tweeting #FinnTheHero and #PoppyTheMess, while Hope Logan, caught between Carter Walton's steady love and Liam's renewed desperation, found herself pulled further into Liam's orbit after visiting him in the hospital, where Liam, still bandaged and weak from Luna's bullet, confessed that he couldn't stop dreaming about her, that Luna's attempt on his life had made him realize how fragile everything was, and Hope, torn by her loyalty to Carter and her lingering love for Liam, broke down in tears, setting up yet another triangle just as the prison plot dominated headlines, and over at Spencer Publications, Bill's pride turned to paranoia, pacing his office and warning Wyatt and Liam that Lee and Luna's sentencing might not be the end, that women like them never truly stay locked up, planting seeds for a future escape arc, while Sheila Carter, sipping wine at Deacon's restaurant, smirked that the world had finally learned what she had always known, that Lee was a fraud, and in an almost unthinkable twist, Sheila began visiting Luna in prison under the guise of grandmotherly concern, shocking viewers as she offered Luna advice about survival and redemption, an ironic mentorship that blurred the line between villain and savior. And while the Forrester family debated whether to cut ties completely or extend a hand of forgiveness, Ridge flatly declared that the Forrester name could not be tainted by Nozawa blood again, leading to an emotional scene where RJ burned Luna's sketches in the Forrester fire pit, symbolically erasing her from the family narrative. But the show cleverly juxtaposed it with Luna sitting in her cell, sketching designs on scraps of paper, proving that her ambition hadn't died, only hardened. Molly secretly plotted to leverage her role in the infirmary to stage a medical emergency that could grant her and Luna access to the outside world, a thread that promised escape, chaos, and revenge down the line. And as this sprawling canvas unfolded week after week, fans celebrated the so-called worthy ending that put Lee and Luna in jail, but also recognized that in the
world of daytime, no ending is ever absolute, that behind every clang of a prison gate is the whisper of an escape plan, that every act of justice births the seeds of new villainy, and thus the saga of Lee and Luna's incarceration became not just an ending, but a beginning of an even darker, richer chapter that pulled every character. Finn, Steffi, Hope, Liam, Bill, Ridge, Brooke, Zen, Poppy, and Sheila into its orbit, proving once again that the bold and the beautiful thrives not on resolution, but on the eternal churn of secrets, lies, betrayals, and second chances. As weeks turn into months in the bold and the beautiful universe, the prison saga Lee Finnegan and Luna Nozawa became less of a final chapter and more of a searing epic woven into every corner of Los Angeles, as mother and daughter adjusted to incarceration in dramatically different ways. Lee, ever the doctor, positioned herself as indispensable in the prison infirmary, treating shank wounds and asthma attacks with a clinical coldness that unnerved even the guards, while secretly slipping notes through medical supply routes, forming alliances with corrupt staffers, and sketching out a meticulous escape plan that involved a staged medical transfer. And Luna, once a doe-eyed dreamer in designer dresses, began to shed her fragility, hardening into something more dangerous as she gained clout among the inmate population, leveraging her beauty and her ability to charm to earn protection from Teresa's crew. And in a shocking scene that left fans tweeting in all caps, Luna was shown orchestrating her first prison hit. Not a murder, but a brutal takedown of an inmate who had threatened her, proving that the girl once introduced as an innocent student designer had fully crossed into villainous territory. And as mother and daughter's arcs darkened behind bars, the free world reeled with fallout. Finn battled night terrors, confessing to Steffi that he sometimes dreamed the two mothers, Sheila, the woman who once shot him, and Lee, the woman who faked his death, and in the dreams. He didn't know which one was worse, a confession that shattered Steffi's confidence, especially as Finn grew more empathetic towards Sheila, praising her for actually showing remorse while he never had. And this unexpected emotional turn made Steffi lash out at Ridge, Brooke, and Taylor, claiming none of them understood the cost of living between two dangerous mothers, while Bill Spencer threw himself into the Spencer empire, hiring top security experts to monitor prison chatter in case Lee and Luna ever attempted a breakout, and confiding in Wyatt that he would burn the city down, before letting anyone hurt Liam again. And Liam, for his part, still recovering from the bullet wound, used his vulnerability to pull Hope closer, telling her that nearly dying clarified his purpose, that he wanted to rebuild their family. And Hope, torn between Carter's loyal devotion and Liam's raw vulnerability, began wavering, with Carter noticing the shift and angrily confronting Liam in the hospital, sparking a tense scene where Bill himself stepped in as a love doctor, warning Carter that Hope's heart would never be entirely his as long as Liam was breathing. And across town, Zen confronted his own demons, haunted by Luna's manipulation during the Mint drugging scandal, telling Ridge that he doubted he would ever trust his instinct again, while RJ, consumed with guilt over his entanglement with Luna, doubled down on designing, pouring his pain into sketches that caught Eric's eye, sparking a subplot about whether the youngest Forrester men could rise from scandal stronger. And while all these threads played out, the prison arcs remained central, Lee whispering to a bribed nurse that she needed oxygen tanks and an ambulance for an upcoming medical transfer, Luna smuggling in a cell phone hidden inside a sewing kit, both arcs hinting that a bold escape loomed. And the most jaw-dropping twist of Sweep's month, Sheila Carter, of all people, became entangled in the prison storyline, visiting Luna under the guise of family support, and secretly slipping her advice about how to manipulate guards, advice born from decades of her own time in and out of lockup. And when Finn learned of Sheila's prison visits, his outrage turned into something more complicated, because Luna admitted during a visitation scene that Sheila was the only one who treated her like a human and not a monster.